Good morning, everybody. I'm Rick Markovitz. I'm on the board of the PRSA Los Angeles chapter, and I'm very happy to greet you today and welcome you to our At Breakfast With, the first one in 2022. We hope to have several of these during the year and expose our members and guests to a wide range of media channels to help people learn how best to pitch and learn what's out there. So before we get started, what we're going to do is have the panel discussion from our esteemed panelists and then go to question and answer with about 10 or 15 minutes left. So what you can do is if you have questions during the panel, you can throw them into the chat and then I'll try and call on you when we go to the Q&A. And if you want, you can turn on your camera and unmute yourself and ask your question. We'll have a discussion. Okay. So with that, welcome again, everybody. I want to greet our panelists. We have Claudia Cagan, Liberté Chan, and Rubi Molina. Now you have their bios it's in the chat and you've seen it in the sign up for the event. So I'm going to start first with a question to Claudia to get started about her journey, as I like to call it, her journey to where she is today, working with ET and what's sort of like the personal challenges and milestones and accomplishments that got you where you are today. So let's get started. Claudia, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Rick, and good morning, everybody. This is fantastic. A new way to get together. I really love it. In the comfort of my own house. Thanks. Well, my personal journey is one that proves that you never know how your life is going to unfold. I had no plans or training to be a TV producer, and yet here I am. I brought one of my Emmys with me and I bring it wherever I go. I got 4 of them in the last 5 years.
Hey.
Wow.
Amazing timing to come back to ET at this moment in time and all of that. Anyway, I'm originally from the Bronx, New York, and then the Upper West Side. I went to the High School of Performing Arts, you know, fame, I'm gonna live forever. And I thought I was going to be a Broadway star. That was the name of my autobiography that I wrote in 6th grade at PS 86. And I did all that training and I didn't get to be a star, but I did get to meet my husband and had twin daughters that are wonderful. And by the way, they both work in the entertainment business. Imagine how that happens. My husband was a composer and an arranger and a conductor. He passed away right before the pandemic, but he was a great guy. You would have loved him. So we found ourselves in California. And my husband came to pursue his career. And one day my sister, who's Melissa Manchester, she's a pretty well-known singer-songwriter, Grammy Award-winning gal. She had an opportunity to be on a Dick Clark series. And he said, well, bring your singers along in your band. And she was in between all of that at the moment. We were in the kitchen and she turned to me after she hung up and she said, well, you know all the words, so you'll be the singer. So I did that for a while and that grew into an amazing opportunity. And she had a big hit song called Don't Cry Out Loud. And so we traveled around the world for a number of years. And then there was a change in management point of view. And they wanted to make her a rock star. She's still not sure about that, by the way, and she's still touring. This is her 50th year.
Wow.
On the road. Anyway, so I came off the road and did some other things. And then a friend of mine recommended me for a production job. And I said, well, I don't know anything about TV production. And he said, well, that's exactly what you're not going to tell this guy. You will tell him what you have done in the last 20 years and who you have known and where you have worked. And he took a chance. And that was my first job. And in that job, I saw a person with, at the time, big Rolodexes. You don't even know what a Rolodex is, but that's a way that those are index cards that have celebrities and their contact information. And I said, that's the job that I want to do. She booked all the celebrities on this show. So I paid attention to that. And the very next show that I worked on, I had that job. I was an assistant to the head person who did that job. And one thing led to another. I have worked at the Arsenio Hall show in the height of the Arsenio Hall show. And I booked then Governor Clinton and Hillary to come, and Bill played the saxophone, and that's apocryphal because it's on every clip, on every show about the 90s and a moment in time. When Arsenio busted, I was 11th hire at Extra. And then I went to Entertainment Tonight for a little while because I had worked with the executive producer on another show. And I left there to go to the Martin Short show and work for King World, and then Hollywood Squares and Politically Incorrect and E! News for 8 years. And then Arsenio called me back because they were going to revive that. And I said, well, I can't not do this. So I did that. And sadly, America was not really interested. I'm still not sure why. Because Arsenio made history on television. And he should be much more celebrated, I feel, than he has been over his career. So that happened. And then I was freelancing, and my friends at ET called me one day and they said, well, one of the gals on the staff is ill, and would you come in just for a couple of weeks to fill in for her? And I said, sure. And so that was in 2016. And then they asked me to join the staff, and I joined the staff just in time to win those 4 Emmys. And I'm the supervising producer, and my beat is, it's very unusual. I handle what we call good works, and that is the philanthropic and charitable efforts of celebrities, which shows them in a wonderful light. It's not gossip. It's not sleazy. It doesn't care who they're marrying or divorcing or what medical issues they have. And it shows the world that people can juggle a big career with a kind heart. So I do that, and then I do some other things. Right now I'm working on iconic TV moms and dads for Mother's Day and Father's Day. So that's me.
Okay, Claudia, thank you. And also you got into one of our other questions, which was your beat, but we're going to come back to talk about that in a little more detail if you have more to share about that. But thank you. That's really interesting. The word I have, the idea I take away is celebrity relationships. That's a very important part of life.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll come back. Ruby, how about you? Let's hear your story and your.
Okay. Well, I was born in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. I moved here when I was 17, 2006. I moved here to be actually in the film industry. I wanted to produce through everything that was film related. And since I got here, I got an opportunity to work at Telemundo local, but I wasn't sure about it because it wasn't my passion. So I remember one of the producers told me, because they really liked how I wrote the stories and everything. He was like, you know what? This is like making little films. You know, every story, just think about it as making like a 3-minute film or whatever. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. So I found out that was like one of my biggest passions, which is, you know, storytelling through media. And in 2012, I got hired by Fox because they were launching their Hispanic division with Mundo Fox. So I was there until they actually like closed the network. And then I went on to work for Telemundo's biggest show, which was Al Rojo Vivo, as a West Side correspondent. And now I'm still at Telemundo for a lot of shows, but especially for one of their biggest shows that launched last year. And I was actually one of the first ones. No, I was the first one to launch bilingual podcast when podcast was starting to be a thing at CBS Play.it. So I've seen the industry change a lot, and especially for Latinos. And I'm really happy to see what's happening, you know, in the country with the inclusion and everything. So basically that's it. And it's just the beginning. I think we have a lot more to offer.
That was great. Ruby, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
What would you say is the audience or the reach of Telemundo in this country?
I mean, there's 60 million Hispanics in the country, right? And the majority are Mexican Americans. So I think it's growing. It's really big, and we see it with all the crossovers that artists are making, you know, or they really want to tap into the Hispanic industry in the States. So yeah, it's pretty wide.
Big. And we'll come back and talk about that. When we met on the phone first, we talked about the diversity within that Hispanic community, and we're going to come back to that and talk about your beat. So that was very good. Thank you. And now, Liberté, let's hear your story, please.
Okay, and I think there's a little bit of an echo, so I apologize in advance. But okay, I was born and raised here in Los Angeles, so I just grew up around this industry. My family has no connection to media at all, but I always was drawn to it. I grew up, and I would watch these weather girls and these reporters on air, and I would think to myself, wow, they're so smart. They have everything, like whatever they're asked, they have an answer to. And I was intrigued and mesmerized by these women who always looked really good and they sounded really good. So I thought, how do I do that? But I was very, very shy, so I had to work my way in slowly. So my first, I have a undergrad in journalism, and then I also have a passion for health. So I went back to graduate school, and I have a degree in master's in public health. So I started at KTLA as an intern, and then I learned how to write, and that was sort of where I started, how I got my foot in the door. I worked on the weekends, I worked on holidays, I worked when people were sick. I was just an eager beaver, and I would work at any time because that's what I wanted to do, and I had no connection. So long story short, I think I stayed at KTLA as an intern and then a writer for 2-3 years. And then I got my start in a small market, as most reporters do, Santa Maria. It's just north of Santa Barbara. I stayed there for a couple of years, and I went to Palm Springs. And then I thought, you know, my dream is to be a reporter here in Los Angeles, and I'm going to make it back there as quickly as possible. So I came back, and I didn't have a job at KTLA, but I went back and I sort of went from reporting and anchoring in Palm Springs to back behind a computer web producing. And I thought, you know, I can make my way back on air. I'll talk to the news director, I'll beg, I'll do whatever they want. You know, I'll work when people are sick, I'll work on holidays. And I was given a chance, and I guess I wasn't that bad. So they kept calling me back, and then that, I guess, turned into a salary job later. And I remember one of the news director's assistants at the time looked at me and she said, I think you look good in a dress. Have you ever thought about doing weather? And in the back of my head, I'd always kept it in my back pocket that I wanted to be a meteorologist weather girl, because, you know, you get to wear fabulous clothes and talk about something that isn't terrible. You know, I was kind of over the hard news stuff. There's a lot of murders and fires, and, you know, I was just kind of over it. So I thought, okay, this is an opportunity I have to learn. So I learned, took me a little while to get there again, but someone was sick and they said, we need someone to come in. So I think I had reported that day, and I came back to the station, and I was given a shot on air, and I didn't mess up that terribly, and I was okay. And they said, okay, well, we'll give you another shot. And they just kept giving me they kept dangling the carrot. And then that quickly turned into, you know, a staff position. And I spent 8 years on the weekend morning show. I loved it. I loved it so much. It was the dream job. So I did weather, and I did one day reporting, and then I did mostly weather. So 4 days out of the week I would do weather, and then 1 day of reporting. And then in February 2021, I decided that once my contract was up, I didn't want to do news and weather anymore. And I was already on LA Unscripted, which had started a few days prior or a few months prior. And so for me, my life, I'm way more into lifestyle and health and wellness. And I love social media. And I just think it's a great way to connect with people and tell stories. And there's so much more freedom when you control your own platform and channel. So I left the news and I'm still on LA Unscripted, and I also do a lot of influencing. So that's where I am right now.
Okay, that's a good diverse portfolio. It's good to see you have your thumb in a lot of different pies, which is probably very smart these days as a journalist.
I hope so.
It seems to be working. I'd like to go to Rubi now. And Rubi, let's go to that topic that we talked about, is the diversity of the Hispanic audience and what their different interests are and how Telemundo and the shows that you represent serve those needs.
Yeah, well, there's as you know, different Hispanic population concentrates different in different states, right? Like in Los Angeles, all California, it's majority Mexican, Salvadorian, just Central America. New York has a lot of Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, and Florida, it's like Colombians. It's like every Latin, it's there. But so we have different correspondents throughout the states. We each cover different needs of the Hispanic community. Like I am in Los Angeles, which there's a lot of regional Mexican music. Like we just had a band performing 8 nights in a row in the Staples Center, now Crypto.com. And that same band is going to perform in May 2 nights at the SoFi Stadium. It's crazy how much. Yeah, it's like just unheard of in just music in general. And what surprises the most is just how many of us are we here? You know, like it's just crazy. The consumer, like it's really insane. So we're basically catering to those needs and to the different types of Hispanics. You know, like I was seeing, like I had to cover the Oscars, and I see the comments online, and they were like, oh, you should highlight that this was Colombian, and like they're just very like, you know, like they really want to see themselves represented at every single story. And it's just like, it's not just like, oh, Hispanics. No, it's like you have to be precise if it's Puerto Rican, if it's, you know, Dominican, Argentinian, Mexican, because we all have such a strong culture. I'm very proud of it. That's why we have correspondents throughout the states. And I'm Mexican American. There's the girl in Miami, is the girl in New York is a, you know, like Puerto Rican. And so that's basically what we try to do, you know, to be inclusive within our same Hispanic community, which is like many countries. But I was reading, even though like, I think Mexican Americans are the most in the States, right? But we are over 62 million, which we represent almost 20% of the population in the States. But our consumer base is very like loyal. Like Hispanics really consume, like we're consumers, you know, like if they have $10, like they will spend it on the weekend in a concert or in the movies, you know, or that's why the Hispanic, I think people are actually starting to look at the Hispanic market as a very good business, you know?
Right. And can you tell us a little bit about, you know, 1 or 2 of the shows that you were particularly involved with, about what you look for or the theme of those shows?
Yes.
I'm sure this audience is not that familiar.
Yes, so I'm doing the it's like a magazine show which is called En Casa con Telemundo. It started at the pandemic and it just grew crazy. Like that was the first show that was not like a controversial show, which, you know, like I don't know, the past few years, I don't know what got into media that it was, everything had to be like in a bad angle, like celebrities in a bad angle, like everything was just horrible. So in the pandemic, Telemundo was like, let's do a show that's positive, you know, because all of this craziness going on in the world. And it actually worked, and it worked great. And celebrities really want to be in our shows. They really open their doors of their homes because they know the story is going to be, it's not going to be, it's not like it's going to be a good story with like substance, but it's not going to put them in a bad light. You know what I mean? So that show really is doing great. And then there's another show that started that it's kind of like The View, but for Hispanics, with it, they have not been able to do, just like they have not been able to do late night, you know, because I guess every culture is different. So there's 3 shows because I work directly with one of the VPs of programming. And so he puts my stories wherever he feels they're fit for. But the first one is the one that I'm more involved with, the lifestyle. And we basically cover, we like to praise Latinos in every area. So when we pitch a story, it's just like, there's Latinos are everywhere, right? Or Hispanoparlantes, which is like Spain, or so if they're involved in, I don't know, in community, or if they're involved in a book and art and whatever, or their parents, or their 2nd generation or 3rd generation of immigrants here, we like to tell their stories, but there always has to be obviously like a Hispanic, how do you call it, like angle to it, right? So basically we cover community entertainment mainly, sports, every life story that's a good story.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's very helpful. Now let's go to Liberté. When you and I were speaking, we came up with the term, and it was you who said it, was hyper local. And I have a feeling, about KTLA. When usually if I hear about something local, unfortunately, it's probably like if it's an earthquake. I go to KTLA when I really want the LA story.
Excuse me, Rick, you should watch Spectrum News.
Right. I don't get that. I have heard that.
Well, everybody should get Spectrum News. That's how I start my day. It is hyper local news. It is the old PM Magazine formula, and it's brilliant every day.
Oh.
Well, I have a confession to make, is that we tried to get Spectrum for this panel, and so they didn't come through, but you're right. You're absolutely right. And we've been looking at them for other things as well. Okay, great. So Liberté, talk to us about hyperlocal, your role in it.
Sure.
And then, okay, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I guess I can break it kind of up into 2 categories. So one for local news, one for LA Unscripted, because they're just completely different formats.
Please.
So local news, I just like to use that term hyperlocal because that's what KTLA is. We're a local station. We just focus on, the story. Maybe it's a national story, but we put it into a local angle. So we just kind of shift from, whether or not people want to know if their school's open. During the pandemic, there were so many questions. Can you wear masks at school? Are you supposed to wear a mask? Things like that. Is the drugstore going to give you a booster shot? So we try to really just focus on that, because I feel that that's what people want here. And they're not going to get that if they turn on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News. That's just a national, very broad scale way of sharing stories. So we just try to focus on local, hyper local stuff. For LA Unscripted, it's very LA centric. It's very, Southern California centric, because we don't want to exclude, Orange County or Ventura County or the IE. But generally, we focus on stories here in Southern California that impact people here in Southern California. And we try to bring them interesting, unique stories that they may not know. Interesting people and places that they may have never heard of. So I think that's what I meant when I said hyperlocal.
Absolutely.
Right. So LA Unscripted is more, let's say, I don't know if this is the correct simplification, but sort of what would normally be at the end of a national broadcast, like the feel good or the unusual twist story.
Human interest.
Yeah. It's more featurey. So it might be highlighting a new restaurant, but that new restaurant it's not just highlighting the opening of this restaurant, but something interesting and cool that you as a consumer could go experience. You know, I think there are experiences out there that people don't know about. There are people out there who are making an impact, and we just want to share that information.
Right. And it does not have any kind of investigative aspect to it. This is more about really connecting people to the community.
Exactly. It's where Los Angeles is kind of the star of the show. We want to find interesting, unique stories, whether it be people or places, and tell them.
And when is the show on? When does it air?
It's on Monday through Saturday, or Monday through Sunday. I think they do a repeat on Saturday. But anyways, Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock, Channel 5. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, we had to let you get that plug in there.
Thank you.
Do you ever discuss, I'm sorry, I can't help myself, the incident when you were a weather person and the on air, can I the on air wardrobe?
Right. The sweater gate, is that what you're referring to?
I just want to set it up and say that Liberté demonstrated amazing resilience on the air when she was in the middle of a weather forecast, and somebody comes in and holds a sweater out to her to put it on. And then I'll let you finish it from there. And then I'd love to know if there are any repercussions and how you felt about that, because it was a remarkable, it's a great clip on YouTube.
It is. You know, it kind of just was a very small thing. On the weekend morning show, we kind of didn't have a lot of managers there. We had, no managers there, and it was very early in the morning, so I don't know if they were really watching. And so we got away with a lot, especially in the beginning when we first started the show. So I think that was closer to like 2013, 2014. So I think we just kind of poked fun at each other. And I think it was just a situation that was very, it wasn't a big deal for us in the studio, but it became a big deal once it aired. And then it kind of just snowballed into this bigger thing. And all of a sudden I'm like in Time magazine, like it was like a moment of the year, it was like a weird thing. And I think everyone just had an opinion about it. But for me, it kind of was a small situation. I think if you are familiar with the KTLA morning show, you know that everybody pokes fun at each other, and we give each other a hard time, but it's all in it's for the fun of the show and to keep it light in the morning. So I have no hard feelings, and it was just kind of a funny situation that turned into something bigger.
The one thing, the takeaway from it was that when this happened, and you said why or something like that, and the person handing the sweater said email. And the point I wanted to make was it shows the connection that people have and the responsiveness to television, that they're emailing in the feedback on something like that. But anyway, thank you for indulging me. I just thought the resilience was great. Let's go to Claudia now. Claudia, let's expand a little bit on what you were saying about your beat, because it sounds to me like you want to have one of the greatest jobs in the business, to focus more or less on good news and good deeds.
Yes, it sort of evolved. And by the way, before I start, I just want to say that Sam Rubin, Mr. KTLA, I like to call him Mr. KTLA.
Yes.
I have known him since I worked at PM Magazine. He was the first person I knew that had a laptop. We used to just like look at it and ask him about it. Like, what exactly are you doing on it? How can it help us? Because we were still making TV on yellow legal pads with pens.
Wow.
You guys can't even imagine that. But we made the Arsenio Hall show on yellow legal pads with pens, with no computers, and life went on just fine. Anyway, and by the way, Liberté, your show, my morning schedule during the pandemic was Spectrum from 7:30 to 9, and then at 9 o'clock I turn on KTLA, and it stays there for the rest of the day, because I am interested in the news of my community. When I want CNN's information, I turn that on. But the news that you provide, that KTLA provides and Spectrum provides, I think is more important to us as a community than anything else.
Well,
Because
thank
we
you.
need to know where we live. We just need to know where we live. Anyway,
Thank you.
enough about you.
Thank you. Thank
But
you.
say hello to Sammy for me,
I
please.
will. I will.
Yes, this idea of good works, it sort of evolved with while I was sort of on the job, because when I was hired back, I was covering the TV beat, because that has been my bread and butter over the years. And the gal that I was sitting in for, that was her beat. But the executive producer at the time was thinking about this, and she asked me, she said, I'm thinking that there's so many celebrities that are helping charities that maybe we should focus on that. And I said, oh, you mean like good works? And she said, exactly. So, but to be honest, I think that when she first thought of it, she didn't think that it was going to be much of anything other than once in a while there's a charity auction or the GLAAD Awards or something like that. That is a couple of times a year, and that's that. Well, I took it as a challenge, and she said, well, come back to me in 2 weeks and let me know what you find out about this whole idea. And I called her bluff, and in 2 weeks I had a whole long list of things. Anyway, one of the first things we did was Patricia Heaton works with World Vision, and we went with her to Rwanda in Africa, and we met families that were impacted by the World Vision water program, and it was incredible. That was one of our first pieces. And we went with Eva Longoria to a middle school in the North Valley that she helps through her foundation. We went to a cancer center that Patrick McDreamy, give me his name.
Dempsey?
Yeah, he endowed it in honor of his mom. And these sort of people, Gary Sinise, who has his Christmas event every year to support families of wounded and deceased soldiers. So there is an entire book to be written about these wonderful people. Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood building Habitat for Humanity homes in Nashville area. And publicists get in touch with me and pitch me these opportunities. And one of your members here this morning just filled me in on an event that he's doing, a charitable event that he's doing. And at ET, we have a couple of ways to cover charity. It could be through a feature that I might produce, depending on all the elements, or we have there's a gallery online, because ET Online is a huge part of the ET brand, and it's called Celebs Giving Back. And we just we'll run a photograph of an event with a blurb about the event and money that was raised and the auspices of the charity. So we're just trying to let people know all the time that celebrities are good people.
Okay, that's a good story.
Yep.
Let's go back to Ruby then. What I wanted to ask, let's get into the trends part of this discussion now. What do you see happening? And I think Claudia sort of touched on something, which is the dynamic of analog, regular television and online, and how you have to work to make these things work together. That is, I wonder how that plays out in your world.
What was the question? The trans community?
In trends, the need now to work with analog and digital as a brand, that you have to make it work.
Digital, well, that was the thing, because our community didn't consume as much digital as their general market. So I think we're barely here in the States are a little bit more, they consume it a little bit more, but in our countries, we're still more dependent on radio and TV. Like it's like our Bible, right? TV and radio, like the old forms of communication. But I think we are kind of making it work better nowadays, putting the stories online. That is something that is not as strong yet in our community, the digital. Look, what I've been seeing a lot, it's in music. The new generations, the kids, they do consume a lot of digital music, right? But for TV, like for pieces and online, it's not as strong as we would like to yet with the older generation. That's why for TV, there's a different audience. We have everything, right? We have the new kids that are like cater to the digital world, and we have the older generation that cater for TV. So that's something that hasn't meshed yet for TV, but I think we're on the right path.
Okay.
Did that answer your question? Okay.
Yes.
Language, language barrier sometimes it's.
I think the takeaway is that different audiences have different media consumptions habits.
Yes.
And for people in our line of work, we have to direct our pitches and target them accordingly, depending on what specific audience we're trying to reach.
But interestingly enough, Rick, at ET, the digital team, which had previously been in a whole other building, has all moved over to our building on the Radford lot. I don't think I can call it the CBS lot anymore. Maybe it'll have a new name. Anyway,
Yeah.
The digital team is in our building with offices among us. And for example, if I get a pitch and it is not right for a broadcast story, I share it with my colleague on the digital team who may want it because we have a show. There's a show called The Download, an ET Download, and that runs on the stream. So a celebrity may be like a couple of weeks ago, I was pitched a celebrity, a really cool young guy actor in a series, and I pitched it, and everybody was like, yeah, no, but see what Trisha thinks at online. And she booked this fellow for an interview on The Download, and the interview ran in its entirety of about 9 or 10 minutes. So there's all kinds of opportunities, and the way management sees it now is that ET is a brand. It's not ET online and ET broadcast. It's simply ET with the sky's the limit brand.
Yeah, that's one. Yeah, with us, it's not this, like we don't have that big of an infrastructure yet.
Not yet.
Yes. And we see it with awards, because like we have these kids that are charting like crazy on every digital platform, like globally, right? And then we pitch it for awards, for them to sing, and the producer is like, it's not our audience. Like we can see the metric go down when they perform because it's not our audience, and it sucks. But we have to understand what we cater for, and I think soon we will have that digital team because of the new generation of these new kids consuming this new music, right? Yeah. So I mean, we'll be there like you guys for me.
Everybody has to have a modicum of patience, because it's sort of like ET, the primary audience for ET broadcast is, even though there are those who would not like to hear me say this, it's an older demo. We are in our 41st season. And by the way, I have the review from the first show in September of 1981. And it essentially said, who will care about what Burt Reynolds' house looks like? I don't give this show 6 weeks. And here we are in our 41st season talking about, Justin Bieber's house, for example. But it's a matter of broadening the audience little by little, so we keep that 50+ audience and we add that younger audience who is not watching our show on television.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
I think at KTLA, and I love the way that you described how the pitches come in, and if it's not for you, if it's not for television, it might be for your digital team. I think that's exactly what happens at KTLA. We have an online show, and they can give the interview a little bit more breathing room, and you can do a 5-minute interview or a 10-minute interview. I don't know the exact numbers, don't quote me, but you can give them a longer time. Versus television, you want it 30 seconds, if that. So I love the way that you kind of described that, because that saves me the trouble of describing it, but we pretty much do the same thing. But yeah, I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
I just wanted to remind the audience that we're coming up on what we are at 8:45. Is if you start to have questions, we can, if I see there's questions in the chat, or if you raise your hand, I'm going to go to gallery view. We'll try to get the questions in. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going here. One of the questions that did come up in the chat was about, it's called paid or sponsored content, whether that is a practice that's going on in your neck of the woods, and how it works, if you can, any costs involved with it, and just the process and how you maintain editorial integrity.
We have a branding producer at ET. This is a whole new world for me, this whole idea of branded content, because in years past, if I don't know, let's just say Henry Winkler was working for a company, supporting a company, and he would just mention it during an interview about a movie he was doing, that would be that. Well, no, not anymore. If he wants to mention a brand, I have to circle in the branding producer, and the branding producer discusses the possibilities of making some kind of a deal. I have nothing to do with the money, but those conversations take place, because at the end of the day now, that is free advertising. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it depends on the stature of the celebrity. I can't even name the celebrities in question here, but depending on the stature of the celebrity, sometimes they'll be able to make an arrangement for a quick mention. But it's all done very carefully, can't have a lot of signage, can't have a lot of conversation, can maybe be a mention one time. But it's definitely a new consideration.
So there's definitely rules of engagement for you.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Yes, because, and I know people, maybe they're here in the group, different agencies who specialize, that's who they do, they represent brands, and they'll pitch me and they'll say, I'm going to say Elizabeth Taylor is going to be doing something with Pond's face cream, and we have Elizabeth available for an interview. Well, I have to still put it in touch with the brand producer, because they have to speak to the people at Pond's and talk about integration budgets and what's available, what's not available, and what's possible. So that is a whole conversation that I didn't have before 4 years ago.
Okay. What about Liberté? Do you have that situation as well? Or I know it might not be your direct responsibility, but what do you see where you are?
Well, I think I can answer it on 2 fronts, or 3 fronts, actually. So for news, we don't do anything paid. It's just a hard, fast rule. As a journalist, as a reporter on air, you can't mention things and get paid for it. It's in our contract. We sign a payola thing, and it's just, you can't do that. We would get in trouble. The station would get in trouble. For LA Unscripted, they do branded content where I don't know the money situation as well, but I believe there has to be a disclaimer at the bottom, this is sponsored content of some sort. And you would probably have to contact the producer, and I don't know. Again, I don't know the money situation with that. For influencing, because I do quite a bit of that as well, if I have a manager and she books jobs, and obviously I work with brands. So if I'm using my own platform, you know, I'm obviously not working for the station, I'm just my own person. I can accept paid, I will do paid posts. A lot of times it's on stories. Most brands are really interested in just doing stories because you get the analytics afterwards, and you know, the click-throughs and how many people saw it and all that information. But you do have to say, you know, hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored, or hashtag brand, and then partner. So there are some rules that way.
Yeah, I think it's governed by the FTC. I think there's very specific guidelines about that.
Yeah. And there's even like a thing that I also click. It's like a paid partnership.
Good.
People know.
Yeah, we don't get involved in any of that. The only thing that I think is Liberté, you know, when we have it has a name. It's like, it's not Steals and Deals, but it's something like that once a week, where they have Amy Paffrath may come in and she talks to Matt Cohen and they have some product, but that is sponsored. Morning something. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question from Mina in the audience. Would you like to turn on your camera and ask your question, please?
Sure. Good morning.
Just unmute yourself. Okay.
I am unmuted. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ruby, Liberté, and Claudia, and obviously you, Rick, for such an informative panel. So I'm from Guadalajara. Go, Ruby. I came here as an immigrant child. I came here illegally at 4 years old, and we settled near Dodger Stadium. So I grew up near downtown my entire life. And by pure determination and hard work and putting myself through college and, you know, doing everything really on my own, I managed to grow a pretty large cosmetic company, which I sold a few years ago. Then I started a PR agency, and I landed some pretty big name clients, like our former president, which starts with an O. And so just through, you know, through hard work and dedication, I did that. And then I got bored with the PR agency, which I still own, by the way. I do a lot of marketing strategy. I started a tequila company that has really kind of blown up on its own, because I used it as a hobby, and then it kind of just morphed into a really cool brand that I've tied. I'm very philanthropic, and I believe in giving back. And so I have a program that is called Paycheck to Paycheck. So I make microloans to families that are one paycheck away from being evicted from their apartment, because that could make a difference. And I was there as a child living in Highland Park. And so I know what it means to have $10 and to have nothing. So this brand has really grown, and it's of course it's one of the most competitive industries I could have picked to be in, which is tequila, alcohol. But I'm wondering if any of you cover any of those type of stories where it's kind of, you know, immigrant zero to actually self-made in a two very tough industries, actually. So, because I know a lot of you talked about lifestyle and celebrities and that kind of thing. I'm not a celebrity, and by no means, but obviously there's a story to be told. And in fact, right now I'm headed to a high school to teach young girls in high school about building businesses and scaling and not taking no for an answer.
Ruby, it sounds like you were going to react. Go ahead.
Yeah, we definitely cover inspirational stories from people like you in our community, like self-made, hardworking, anything that will inspire our community to be better, to grow, to never give up. We cover those stories. It doesn't have to be celebrity. And obviously with a celebrity, it's always easier to pitch it. But the beauty of this show that I do, it's that we cover a lot of those stories. You know, we always have to be encouraging our community. Our motto is, if you can help translate it for me, enaltecer a los latinos. Mm-hmm. That is our motto. So definitely be a story that I could pitch.
Okay.
to
Okay,
Markowitz.
I'll reach out,
Thank you.
Ruby. Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
guys
Can I
very
jump
much.
in as well?
Yes,
Uh,
Liberté.
I know you asked Ruby.
By the
about
way, I
this.
love your name.
Thank you.
Liberté,
Thank you so
yeah.
much. But this would be like a great story for LA Unscripted as well. So I would love the information, and I would love to pitch you as well.
Okay, definitely. I'll reach out for sure.
Okay, that was great. What I'd like to do in the remaining time, because some of our panelists have hard outs at 9, is real quick. What is the best way to pitch you? Because we just saw the best use of a pitch on a Zoom session that I've seen in a long time.
Right. Yeah.
But real quick, maybe start with Claudia. What's the best way to pitch you?
The best way to pitch me is through email. My email is Claudia.
We furnished it in the chat.
You got
Everybody
that,
has
good.
a contact.
So yes, it's best way is to start with an email, a concise pitch. Try to put the pitch in the lead. A former boss of mine used to say, pitch the promo. Don't just tell me you have a new actress on a primetime drama. Pitch me something that makes this person unique and special. And if it's exclusive, that's the thing about ET after 41 years. We're pretty much interested in an exclusive or first opportunity. And if you don't hear from me, I am pretty good about getting back to people, but if you don't hear from me in a couple of days, you can follow up with another email, or then you can call me, and I will generally respond one way or the other. But start with an email, and tell me as much as you can in as few words about the person that you're pitching and why it would be an important and fascinating opportunity for ET.
I love that. Pitch the promo. I love
Pitch
that.
the promo,
I'm gonna
absolutely.
steal that one.
Absolutely. Oh, and also I want to say, make sure you're watching all the shows that you're pitching before you do. Because well, you would be surprised how many dentists and orthopedic specialists I get pitched. And what I generally tell these lovely ladies and gentlemen is, if you are pitching me this orthopedic surgeon who has a celebrity coming in to have her ankle reset, and she wants to have a camera there, perhaps that's a conversation we can have. But otherwise, I am not that show. ET does not really do that. And we used to do some cosmetic stuff, but we don't even do that as much. It depends on the personality. So watch the show you're pitching before you type anything, because everybody's busy.
But you make it sound like there's a room for celebrity chiropractor now.
Well, there is, in fact, yes.
Okay, Liberté, what's the best way to pitch you? And you have distinct channels to your brand.
I do. So if it's for news, I guess I could be the first line of defense, and then I'll pass it on to the correct person at KTLA. But if you are doing local news, just be in touch with what's going on in the world. Don't pitch, an Easter thing if a war is just breaking out. Like, just take the temperature of the room, figure out who you're pitching, and just if it's timely or not. For LA Unscripted, it's all about visuals, and for local news, it's all about visuals. We want really good visuals. If you already have that in a B-roll form, great. We will use that. And just interesting stuff that hasn't been told a million times. And then LA Unscripted is just, again, very hyper-local, very like LA centric. And also they love codes. They love like, oh, if we're gonna highlight a brand here, someone started it when they're 18 and now it's blowing up, a clothing brand, give the viewers a code, maybe like 10% off, 15, whatever. They love that as well. As a personal brand, just being an influencer, I think, again, email is the best way to pitch me. And then I'll probably put you in contact with my manager if it's a good fit, but I'm never going to really pitch or put my name behind a brand that I wouldn't use. So I'm mainly like lifestyle, health and wellness, that kind of a person. I'm not going to do something for cigarettes or, you know, just that it has to be something that I would use, you know, personally if I'm going to promote it on my channel.
Right. And Ruby, best way to pitch it.
Well, I think I cover a little bit of that via email. It's great. Lifestyle, anything with a Hispanic involved or someone that Hispanics love. Like Denzel is one of our own, so they never say no to Denzel's movies. You know what I mean? Or anything.
Oh, that's a really interesting thing about crossover people.
Yeah. We have our actors that they never say no to. You know, like they're like, yeah, if there's a junket or a movie or whatever that we get sometimes, there's some actors that, like, if they're very Will Smith, I mean, you know, there were a few that
we
like
went there.
Yeah. I mean, just people that have been like very strong in our communities for years, even if they have nothing to do with the Hispanic community, they say yes to, you know. But any of that hard news, hardly ever. That's with our news department, but I can totally redirect you with them. But yeah, that's basically it.
No, that's great. Now, I just want to point out, I think some of our panels have to bail at 9 o'clock, but for the audience, if you look in the chat, the contact information is there in a document, PRSA-ABW panel doc. So you can go in there and download it before we end the session. And is there anything else that any of the panelists want to add? Because we're coming up on the 9 o'clock and I promised that I would release you at 9 o'clock, but I wanted to thank you. And if we could give air applause, I really appreciate what you've done here. Is there any final notes from any of our panelists before they have to jump? No? Well,
thank you. It was awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I found it very useful. I think in summary, you know, one of the things that came up for me was this notion of representation, and that we have to be mindful that different audiences want to see themselves.
Right.
And we have to work to make that connection from our clients and show how it's relevant to the lives of the audience.
And if I may, I think we are proud that we have two African-American spectacular journalists as the hosts of Entertainment Tonight in the 41st season, a show that has been historically lily white in their hosting. And Kevin Frazier and Nichelle Turner are top of the line human beings, but representing an important part of the population. It makes me very proud every day.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Well, thank you very much, Claudia, Liberté, and Ruby. And I'll let you go on with your days now. Claudia, I know, has a show to get out.
Thank you so much.
And it's great. Thank you. And then
Thank you, everyone.
I'll stay on we can keep the Zoom open a little bit with Christina. If there's any audience members that want to hang out for a little bit and just decompress, we can do that. And then if you're bailing yourselves, then we'll stop. But anyway, thank you very much, our panelists, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rick. Great program.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, if I told people that I had Will Smith's publicist, you all would have stayed on, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, I wanted Chris Rock on the show today, Rick. That's right. Your next guest.
Sorry,
you know,
I didn't deliver.
Incredible story. We're doing a fundraiser. I go, what a person to honor right now. The show will go on award or something, you know, or I mean, amazing to get slapped in the face and keep going and act like nothing happened. I mean, obviously the Lenny Bruces of the world and Don Rickles and all these cutting edge comedians. Okay, maybe what he said wasn't the best taste or whatever, but so what? It was amazing. And then to me, Chris Rock just showed what incredible entertainer. And boy, the Academy was very lucky this year they had that, because it really pumped up attention. And regardless of what people say, it's true in certain times. Publicity is publicity. In this case, whatever. At least everyone's still talking about the Academy Awards rather than
Yeah.
falling asleep from a 3-4 hour show.
I'm not so sure about that principle for this incident.
I think so.
But anyway, it's to be debated. Anyway, Christine and the Huntington Group, thank you for your production of today's Zoom. And anybody else, if you have questions, my contact is on the contact information, and most of you know me anyway. But I think that's it for today, unless somebody has anything else they want to add. But thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Great job.
Thank you, Rick. This
so
was
much.
great.
Okay.
Have a good
Thank you,
day,
everyone.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.